You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynne Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday the 12th of February 2014. Tipton rapist has jail sentence extended at Court of Appeal. Britain's too ignorant for EU referendum, says top European Commission official. Bomb sent to Army Careers Office in Reading. Swiss migrants' vote stirs alarm in Italy. French firm bans Muslim headscarves at work. Austrian woman freed by Dubai police speaks out. Iraqis revel in poetic justice of instructor blowing up aspiring suicide bombers. Australian government releases cartoon in campaign warning asylum seekers not to waste their money on smuggler boats into the country. Thought for the day, the threat from Europe. And finally, the Irish prostitute. Now, before I start the news today, I have an appeal to make. I'm a simple person with a simple message wrapped up in our national flag. I see things simply, and the simple truth is that we, as a party, need people, and another truth is that we need voters. It's no use lamenting in the confines of your home on the way the country is going, or rather not going, and yet still sitting there like a dog on a thorn but too lazy to move. We have a good chance in Wythenshawe with our very good and competent candidate Eddie O'Sullivan standing for our party and your party, the British National Party. It is how you see yourselves in 5 years' time that should get you into action and to the voting booths. No matter how foul the weather or how busy many of you are, get there and vote. Only by voting for us will you start a new era on the political scene, one which successive governments have tried to obliterate and nearly succeeded. Vote for Eddie tomorrow and give us, the British National Party, a chance to put our country and you, the voters, first. For a change. UK news. Tipton rapist has jail sentence extended at Court of Appeal. A bogus taxi driver who raped a woman after she got into his car in Wolverhampton has had his original prison sentence extended by the Court of Appeal. Boshir Ali, aged 35 of Wellington Road, Tipton, was originally sentenced at Wolverhampton Crown Court to 7 years and 9 months, but the Solicitor General appealed that term handed down was too lenient. Now the Court of Appeal has replaced the original jail term with a 10-year sentence. Ali posed as the taxi driver outside the Babylon nightclub in Wolverhampton city centre in May 2013. Following a work night out, the 20-year-old victim was assisted by her manager into Ali's car, which they both believed to be a licensed taxi as it was decorated with minicab stickers. Instead of taking her home, Ali drove the young woman to a lay-by. He then told 2 police officers who had approached his vehicle that the victim was his girlfriend and he was taking her home. He then drove the young woman to a car park where he raped her. Britain's too ignorant for EU referendum, says top European Commission official. Britons are too ignorant about Europe to vote in a referendum on the subject, a top Brussels official claimed last night. Viviane Reding, Vice President of the European Commission, said that the British debate about Europe was so distorted that people could not make an informed decision about whether or not to stay in the EU. Reding, who boasted that 70% of the UK's laws are now made in Brussels, also rubbished David Cameron's bid to curb immigration from Europe, saying it was incompatible with membership of the EU. World at 8. We're uninformed because we are like mushrooms, Reding, kept in the dark and fed on shite. Bomb sent to Army Careers Offices in Reading. A bomb has been discovered at the Armed Forces Careers Office in Berkshire. The package arrived in the post at the premises of St Mary's Butts, Reading, during the afternoon. Another package was received at the Army and RAF Careers Office at Dock Road in Chatham, Kent, Thames Valley Police said. That has not been confirmed as a bomb. The South East Counter-Terrorism Unit is investigating whether there's a link between the two. An MOD bomb disposal team was called to the office in Reading at about 1400 GMT and the area around it was sealed off. Officers on the scene confirmed it was a small but viable explosive device which had been received in the post and had been made safe. Kent Police said officers were called to the Chatham office at 10:45 Greenwich Mean Time following a report of a suspicious package. In a statement they said, after the envelope that had been delivered to the building had been made safe, the scene was stood down at about 5 p.m. Inquiries are now ongoing which will involve whether the incident in Chatham is linked to the one in Reading. World date: we will never know. European news. Swiss migrants' vote stirs alarm in Italy. Northern League energised wants similar measures at home. In Italy and throughout Europe, the vote is expected to energise anti-EU parties ahead of the European Parliament elections in May, where such parties are expected to win big. Switzerland has taught the European Union a big lesson about democracy, said Mario Borghesio, an MP from Italy's regionalist and anti-immigrant Northern League, which has forged ties with France's far-right National Front. Brussels has imposed its choices on us, from austerity to the euro, without ever giving us a chance to voice our desires in a referendum. This is called democracy. Both the League and the National Front called on their respective countries to introduce similar referenda. The Swiss are showing great common sense, National Front leader Marine Le Pen told French radio. I think if France held a referendum on the same theme, the French would largely vote against mass immigration. French firm bans Muslim headscarves at work. A privately owned French company claims to have become the first in the country to ban the wearing of Muslim headscarves and other prominent religious symbols at work. But critics say the move, which had the backing of employees, is against the law. From Tuesday onward, the 4,000 workers at recycling company Peprec, based in the Parisian suburbs, will no longer be allowed to demonstrate their religious faith by wearing items like the yarmulke, the kippah, the Jewish skullcap, Christian crosses and Muslim head or face covers. World date: they've banned all references to religion, so haven't broken any laws of running a private company. Austrian woman freed by Dubai police speaks out. A woman who said she was raped by the son of a police chief in Dubai has told how she was locked up and treated worse than a dog when she tried to have him arrested. The woman, who was only freed after intervention by Austria's young Foreign Minister Sebastian Kurz, who organised a crisis team to head to the UAE to negotiate the woman's release. She faced charges of having sex out of marriage when she complained she had been raped and faced jail as a result. She was told she could escape being charged if she agreed to marry the man she said had attacked her. Back home in Austria, the 29-year-old, named only by her first name Marie, spoke for the first time about her ordeal, saying, "It was terrible. I never knew what was going on. They told me nothing when I said I'd been raped. Instead, everything was taken away from me and I was locked up. Nobody kept me informed about my situation. I was treated worse than a dog. Nobody spoke to me properly. It was horrendous. I just thought it would be like in Europe, counselling, maybe tests, but now I know better. Dubai is very different. But I'm proud to be Austrian and I'm so grateful to Sebastian Kurz and the whole team. I know now that I will never travel to an Arab country again." World news. Iraqis revel in poetic justice of instructor blowing up aspiring suicide bombers. Baghdad. It would probably be rule number 1 in the manual for instructors of aspiring suicide bombers: don't teach with live explosives. In a cautionary tale for terrorist teachers and a cause of dark humour for ordinary Iraqis, a commander at a secluded terrorist training camp north of Baghdad unwittingly used a belt packed with explosives while conducting a demonstration early Monday for a group of militants, killing himself and 21 other members of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, army and police officials said. On Monday evening, Raad Hashim, working the counter at a liquor store near the site of the attack, burst out laughing when he heard the news. "This is so funny," Hashim said. "It shows how stupid they are, those dogs and sons of dogs." More seriously, he said, "It also gives me pain as I remember all the innocent people that were killed here." "This is God showing justice," Hashim continued. "This is God sending a message to the bad people and the criminals in the world to tell them to stop the injustice and to bring peace. Evil will not win in the end. It is always life that wins over death." In addition to the 22 militants who were killed, 15 others were wounded at the incident in the militant compound, which was in the rural area of northeastern Salahuddin province, according to police and army officials. Stores of other explosives, including at least 10 vehicles packed with explosives ready for operations, were found at the camp, as well as heavy weapons, the officials said. 8 militants were arrested when they tried to escape. The militant commander who was conducting the training was not identified by name, but he was described by an Iraqi army officer as a prolific recruiter who was able to kill the bad guys for once. Back in the liquor store in Baghdad on Monday evening, Hashim, in almost celebratory mood, passed 4 bottles of Corona to a customer and took his money. What happened today was not death, but it was life to us. Those 22 who were killed today might well have killed hundreds of Iraqis, hundreds of innocent souls. May they burn in hell. World at 8. Well, he has a point. More Iraqis kill their own than the West have ever done. Australian government releases cartoon in campaign warning asylum seekers not to waste their money on smuggler boats into the country. The campaign by the Australian government is accompanied by the slogan, "No way, they will not make Australia home." The Australian Department of Immigration and Citizenship has released a cartoon depicting the life of a young Afghani immigrant as part of a campaign that appears to be aimed at deterring asylum seekers from the country. A young man from Afghanistan finds himself detained in an asylum seeker detention centre in the 18-page digital depiction after he tries to catch a boat into Australia. The storyboard was released on the Customs and Border Protection Service's website in November. The Australian government has instructed the Australian Defence Force to turn back boats where it's safe to do so, in what appears to be the first admission that the government has ordered boats of asylum seekers to be turned back. Last month, leaked documents allegedly written by Immigration Minister Scott Morrison showed a code of conduct for asylum seekers to sign on arrival. It revealed that those with temporary visas could potentially be deported if they irritate people, disturb someone, spit or swear in public, spread rumours or exclude someone from a group or place on purpose. World at 8. Bloody hell. If we did that here, half the country would be deported, especially in our heavily enriched areas. Bring it on. 4 players banned from Iranian women's national team for failing gender tests. Women in Iran may not be allowed to attend football matches between male sides for religious reasons, but the beautiful game is popular among the Islamic Republic's female population. Players in Iran's burgeoning professional women's football league will now be subjected to mandatory gender tests after it's been revealed that 4 national team players were found guilty of not being women. The country's football governing body is bringing in the random checks after it was revealed that several leading players, including 4 in the national women's team, were either men who had not completed sex change operations or were suffering from sexual development disorders. Medical inspectors will now randomly attend professional women's games and those in the futsal league to carry out spot checks. Furthermore, clubs will now be obliged to perform gender tests before signing new players to contracts. Those unable to prove they are female will be barred from taking part in the league until they underwent medical treatment, said Ahmad Hashemian, the head of the Iranian Football Federation's medical committee. Thought for the day. The threat from Europe. As I said in my message on Wythenshawe, I am a simple person and I see things in a simply defined way. I'm not an economist, but I know about money. I'm too honest to be a politician, but can see what needs attending to in our country. I'm not a soldier, but I know what a soldier needs, and that is the backing and monetary support from the people he's fighting for. I'm not a good Christian, but I know that we should stand up for our religion in our own country without faltering. These are simple matters of common sense, and ones which the main so-called political parties are siphoning from our manifesto and putting out to the public and voters in their names. And this is simple thievery, prevarication and deceit, and also makes use of my term of misinformation to a great degree. Now, we as a country are under threat from other global nuisances, China, the Middle East and dumps like Korea and Iran specifically. We all know about them, and like animals evading the hunters, we creep around and make ourselves small to avoid being killed. But there is a greater enemy, one who operates from nearer home and one who operates with our permission, or rather accolades from our successive governments, and it is the EU and Europe. Now, we in the British National Party know all about the EU and its disastrous, well, for the UK, policies and rules. The 2 latest being the Schengen border business, in which all and sundry, even those not of the EU, can pass through a EU country, come to England, produce a child and become British, in all senses of the word. If you ignore their different appearance and dress, the method of worshipping, if any, their lack of English both written and spoken, and the inevitable ghettoisation of their own tribes. Put this with a chip on most of their shoulders towards us true Brits, and taking all this into account, the EU might think they've got rid of their problem on us, but in truth they haven't. Also, as we now know, the terrible floods, rain and wind are not normal activities, but ones which agencies and countries should be prepared for, as there is some global disturbance going on, whether on a time clock or just a form of overpollution of man and his greed, who knows. But it is a fact that the EU has not only caused much of the flooding of the Somerset levels, and indeed brought in laws to speed it up, and inclement weather has done the rest. All the apologies of the Environment Agency and government are too little and really too late. For Somerset, this had already been spelled out in an EU-funded conference in Warsaw in 2003. Flood defence for farmlands, along with high levels of subsidies, was for many years an important element of Britain's production-orientated agricultural policy. Many floodplain areas benefit from publicly funded flood defence and land drainage schemes which reduced crop damage and facilitated a change to more intensive farming systems. In the invisible class that is the classic elephant in the room, the European Union, which was behind the last great change in British strategy, heralded by a DEFRA consultation document in July 2004 called Making Space for Water, introducing a new government strategy for flood and coastal erosion risk management in England. The outline of the EU approach had in fact been published in a COM final 2004-472, the very same month as the DEFRA document signalling the European interest and warning of further activity to come. Still more EU-funded meetings to come in the ensuing years, all to the detriment of the UK, our farmers, our civilians and our land. Allowing the flooding as a matter of EU policy introduced by a 2007 directive and consciously adopted by the Environment Agency in 2008, which then sought to increase the frequency of flooding on the Somerset levels. This is called by DEFRA Making Space for Water, another word for flooding, and flood defence has now given way to flood management. Government consultation continued well into 2005. Therein lay the death knell for the Somerset levels, as a new term was to dominate policy: washland. This was an area of the floodplain that was to be allowed to flood or was deliberately flooded by a watercourse for flood management purposes. Unacknowledged by either government, the media or even Chris Smith in his current diatribe, this policy was given legislative force not by the Westminster Parliament but by an EU directive 2007/60/EC of the 23rd of October 2007 on the assessment and management of flood risks. Water Framework Directive, the Habitats Directive, the Environment Impact Assessment and the Strategic Environmental Assessment Directive. The Floods Directive, we are sternly warned, has to be implemented by 2015 and which includes restoration, flooding of the floodplain. And with the EU multiple directives in place, the Environment Agency needed no encouragement. In its March 2008 plan, it had decided that providing a robust economic case for maintenance works on the Somerset levels and moors remains a challenge. The EU is planning to turn England into a huge recreational holiday park for the EU. Our food is to be produced in Poland and other Eastern European nations. Farms are to be turned into game parks and holiday theme parks. Subsidies for food production will be removed and cut, so converting farms away from food production to recreation areas. The whole EU itself is a draft plan and dry run for a fast approaching new global economy and new world order. If the EU fails, maybe the new world order will as well. Somebody has a lot riding on the success of the EU, but who? You can look up the EU documents etc. online for verification, but it shows that the EU is not our friend in any sense of the word, and we knew this many years ago. And yet our governments and officials still toady to it and pass R&Rs that should never see the light of day in a civilised society or a country with its own parliament. The plan for the UK is that of a multi-breeding ground for enrichment, a society unfamiliar with family values but very familiar with monetary ones, and a country totally reliant on the bastard who keeps beating it, the EU. Another factor is, of course, apart from the massive multicultural immigration, the destructive agricultural laws is their policy, or the intention of closing down or causing to be closed down all form of motor manufacturing in the UK. This has already happened in Australia, where soon there will be no car manufacturers in the country and all cars will have to be imported at great cost from either Germany, China, Japan or America. Now take the Ford Fiesta, the most popular average car of 2013, and look at the history of manufacturing. Up to 2002, either most of the whole vehicle and certainly parts of that car were made in Dagenham, but now no longer. This car is made or manufactured in Europe, USA, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Venezuela, China, India, Thailand, Taiwan and South Africa. I know it is originally a US car, but the UK has lost it for fraud. Many other of our own homegrown and older car manufacturers have gone or been bought out, stripped or taken over by European or Chinese or Japanese manufacturers who have subsequently moved the output after a few years to their own countries so they can import back to us. But I'm talking about Europe and the UK, and I wouldn't buy a car made in China anyway, whilst one of the best things to come out of Japan, frankly, are their cars. They're marvellous. Now for us, the nearest manufacturer of cars is in Europe and is Germany. They lost the war supposedly, and yet certainly to my knowledge, when the first early Pakistanis arrived in the UK when I lived in the Midlands, they did not support the then quite good industry of UK car manufacturing, but bought Mercedes from Germany. You could always tell an Asian immigrant by the car he drove, always German and never supporting the UK car manufacturers. So due to unions, misinformation of the press and latterly EU rulings, we have virtually no car manufacturers or wheel-based manufacturing in this country anymore, and you may think that this is just progress, but it is part of a plan. Look back to the First World War, look back to the Second World War and think. We had no real car manufacturing before World War I and had to get our gears in shift pretty quickly as the Kaiser was very well armed as usual. Even for World War II, we had to run around and turn what car manufacturers there were into war effort factories, both for tanks and arms and clothing. We were not prepared for that war and in fact are not prepared for a war or even to defend ourselves nowadays. Why? Because a country that has no manufacturing or factories or sheet metal works in good repair, how can it make tanks, cars or weapons? The answer is it cannot. And that is the plan. The UK is being slowly made inch by inch, rule by rule, an EU dictatorship by not only social engineering but by diverting any form of what could be called upon in times of unrest to hand well away from this country. Already our standing armies have been so drastically reduced we couldn't even mount a defence team to Los Malvinas or the Falklands nowadays. Apparently a Nishan Awad, who heads up the FPV or the Future Predicted Vehicles at BAE, is devising all sorts of robotic antics to make and use. Of course, whether we see the Gorilla in action, which is a large robotic humanoid tank, or the new lightweight non-track tank remains to be seen. The Gorilla is being tested in Sweden, so whether BAE will stick to its intention of 80% of future protected machines being made in this country is somewhat mute for the future. Having got rid of or sold off our so-called old arms, ships and tanks, we will need to get very active in this quarter very soon, and I don't believe it'll happen. I truly believe we are being made, quite simply, totally dependent on imports and manufacturing from foreigners. Whether they be from the EU or the Far East, it doesn't matter. We have always been, as an island, like Australia, independent of Europe, and in fact have usually been at war with one country in Europe at one time or another. So what happens if the worst case scenario occurs? I don't mean China on the march or aliens landing. I mean an inrush of the Muslim populations in Europe to defend their own in any civil unrest we may or may not have in this country. There are about 50 million Muslims in Europe, and 80% are beggars living on Western welfare. The author of this stunning quote is not Geert Wilders or Marine Le Pen. It is a Swedish Algerian journalist, Yaha Abu Zakaria, who revealed this fact during a talk show on Lebanon TV on October the 12th, 2012. Zakaria can be called anything but pro-Western. He also stated in the broadcast, "Let's bring down America, but first let's stop slaughtering one another, then we can attack America." Now put these millions with the UK millions and the people of the Muslim persuasion we have put into key positions in our government and defences, and it's not too hard to see why the EU, who pander disgustingly to Islam, want us in the UK to be hungry, undefended and unable to even graze cattle on floodplains. Not for them the way the Serbs defended themselves against the Croats. Oh no, the EU and Europe doesn't want a war like that again, attracting all the wrong sort of publicity until misinformation got its way. No, a nice quiet takeover, both socially and economically, is much preferred, which is why so much time has gone into thinking out the various laws that take the teeth out of the British lion and make him a pussycat. I may think of things in simple ways, but I'm not a simpleton. But if you vote for any of the main parties this year or in 2015, and I include the EU prostitute Farage in that, you are the simple ones, not us. And finally, the Irish prostitute, a joke to offend the Irish and excuse the accent. An Irish daughter had not been home for over 3 years. Upon her return, her father yelled at her, "Where have you been all this time? Why did you not write to us? Not even a line. Why didn't you call? Can you not understand what you put your old mother through?" The girl, crying, replied, "Dad, I was too embarrassed. I became a prostitute." "You what? Get out of here, you shameless hussy. Sinner, you're a disgrace to this Catholic family, so you are." "OK, Daddy, as you wish. I just came back to give Mummy this luxurious fur coat, a title deed to an 8-bedroom mansion, plus a 5 million cheque. For me little brother Seamus, this gold Rolex. And for ye, Daddy, the sparkling new Mercedes limited edition convertible that's parked outside. Plus a membership to the Limerick Country Club." She takes a breath and continues, "And an invitation for you all to spend New Year's Eve on board my new yacht in the Caribbean." "Now what was it you said you'd become?" said Daddy. Girl, crying again, "A prostitute, Daddy." "Ah, bejesus, you scared me half to death, girl. I thought you said a Protestant. Come here and give your old daddy a big hug." You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynne and I wish you all a very good night.